probably quite a few of them were, but his name was, he was from another combat outfit. I don't know how long he'd been a prisoner, but his name was Lieutenant Bowling. He was the son of our commander, General Bowling. So it's a case of the general's
Son was
the general's own division, the 84th Division, freed his son as a prisoner of war in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Then a couple of lighter things happened. We're getting closer to the Elbe there, and at one point you were selected to guard a bunch of German whiskey that someone had found.
We had reached the Elbe River, yeah. Eisenhower had ordered us to stop. We weren't to go across the Ruhr River because he knew the Russians were coming up. And he wouldn't make it easy to keep us separated.
Right.
And the Ruhr River was a good place to keep us separated. And we had a big command post there that we had taken from the Germans, and it was loaded with whiskey and German whiskey. And we also had another job to do because further up ahead, right at the river, some Germans were still there, and we had to get rid of them. So they ordered us to go up and take this German division that was on our side of the Ruhr River. But they were worried about all the whiskey they had. So one guy told somebody there that Herb Grubb was in the division, and he doesn't drink. He never drinks anything, but we do run into whiskey. And he said he'd be a good one to put on guard here. So they did. They left me on guard there. I had an easy job while they went ahead and had a skirmish with the Germans were up on our side of the river and couldn't find a way to get across. So that was great. That saved me from any trouble anyway. And some of them didn't come back from that trouble as the war was getting near an end. It was their last skirmish.
So shortly thereafter, you had another very good fortune. You won a lottery?
Yeah, it was only about a week later. We're still waiting for the Russians to come up. And they were getting closer. We knew that. Berlin wasn't far away. It was only about 20 miles away. And we had our orders to stay there, though. And they decided to send some of us for a furlough down on the French Riviera. I didn't know that, but then one day somebody came up to where I was in a foxhole there on our side of the river. And he says, "Your name Grubb?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "We just pulled your name out of a hat. You got a furlough. You ready to go to the Riviera, French Riviera?" I says, "Yeah, I'm ready." So
how did they get you down there?
Well, I was put on a truck in a day or two, and I was sent to a place further back where the railroad was still running, and we were all put on a train and sent down to the French Riviera and put in a beautiful hotel and given all new clothes and PX rations. And the PX rations were a lot of cigarettes, of course. And I sold them to the French people. They were always looking to buy cigarettes from American.
You didn't smoke either.
I didn't smoke.
Right.
So I sold all my cigarettes, about 3 cartons of cigarettes to the French, and I forget, got about $16 a carton then. And
that's more than you made in a month.
And I could use that money in the French Riviera. And what I didn't use, I sent home to my wife.
And then shortly thereafter was the day that everyone had been looking for. That was May the 8th, 1945, VE Day.
Well, we were put in occupation, and we were sent back to a place called Weinheim, Germany. And we were going to serve an occupation there, and we were slated also to be sent to Japan. Instead of going home and getting out, we were going to be sent to Japan. But along comes the atom bomb, and ended the war.
Right.
And the ones that had a lot of service were allowed to get ready to go home. And I was sent to Marseille, France, to wait for a ship to take us home. The whole division wasn't sent, just the ones that had a lot of service in the Army. And I was sent to Marseille, France, and I was right on the Mediterranean River. And I had to wait for a boat that was assigned to pick us up.
That was towards the end of the year, was it? Towards.
Yeah, that was getting close to the end of the year, yeah.
Right.
And while waiting for the boat, they had a strike in New York at the harbor. And that was going to delay the ship another week or so until the strike was settled. So we were held up another week or so getting home to America by a longshoreman strike in New York. And anyway,
So you were finally back home then.
anyway, our ship finally came in, and we were sent back through the what do they call it? Where the ships have to go through to get back in the Atlantic Ocean? Gibraltar. Straits of Gibraltar.
Oh, you went through the Mediterranean then?
Yeah.
Straits of Gibraltar.
So
and
we all
across.
wanted to see Gibraltar as we
Right.
went through.
Yeah.
And we went through and we were asleep in bed. And we went through. And when we got back to New York, boy, all the boats were coming out with fire hoses and welcoming us back. It was good to see the Statue of Liberty.
I'm sure it was.
Great.
Now, tell us a little bit about raising your family after that and how you eventually got to Maris Grove.
Well, let's see.
That's a long period of time, but
I had to go to Fort Dix first to get separated from the Army. I kept in touch with my wife all the time, telling her I was coming home. And then I had to ride the train back to New York from Fort Dix and get on the subway and go to my home. I was living in Brooklyn then because I had to do that. My wife I had a child born just before I went overseas, a little girl. And at the same time, my mother-in-law had died, and a 6-year-old sister of my wife was living in Brooklyn, New York, and my mother-in-law died. So we had adopted her too. She came to live with us in Wilmington before all this happened. 6-year-old sister of my wife and a daughter just born. And my wife couldn't make it by herself, so I had to move. Before I went in the Army, I had to move to Brooklyn, New York.
Right.
My father-in-law gave up the place he was living to live with him while I'm serving 2.5 years in the Army overseas. So that's how we made out during the war. And I'd send her home all money I could. And she was getting something from the Army at the same time.
Well, when you did come back home, you worked in Wilmington? At the
My job was in Wilmington. I had to get back to Wilmington. I also had to get living quarters in Wilmington. And that was hard to do at that time. And I finally found a way to do it. I advertised my Brooklyn apartment for a Wilmington apartment in the Wilmington paper. And fortunately, somebody living in Wilmington wanted to get to Brooklyn. A fellow named Joe Cernas and his wife.